This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi there, how are you? I hope you're well and your day so far has been a good one. Today's guest is a football coach, though not an ordinary football coach. This guy, yes, he has an interest in tactics, he has an interest in technique, he has an interest in athletic ability, yet he also has another string to his bow, cognitive training, which, in my book, is absolutely fascinating. Felix Lehmann goes on to share with you today what cognitive training is, how he helps individual footballers and athletes in other sports. You're going to hear us talk about training players, how he goes about training players. We'll talk about helping players use 2 feet, game intelligence, creativity, which all closely align with how I help footballers when supporting them to improve their mental skills. Enjoy. Hi Felix, it's great to have the opportunity to chat with you today. Could you just explain to the listeners a little bit about your background and then your interest in cognitive training?
Yeah, hi David. It's a great pleasure to be on your podcast. Thanks a lot for the invitation. We were already chatting a bit before starting this podcast, and I mentioned to you, my background, I'm a German American in his 40s. I grew up actually in 3 different continents. I went to 9 different schools on 12 school years. And football was my first love, actually. I started playing when I was 1 or 2 years of age with my dad in the garden almost every day. I loved playing football. I loved dribbling. I loved doing tricks. Then I went onto a team. And an interesting aspect, maybe also for you as a sports psychologist, is I stopped playing when I was 11 because I had one of those authoritarian coaches that then didn't stop yelling at us from the sideline. And at the same time, I had 2 good friends at school who loved basketball. So I transferred over to basketball, became a really good basketball player, which was surprising for people in the US that a German could play basketball. And then at the age of 17, I had to stop playing for health reasons. I started coaching basketball right away at the age of 17, at my first team. A really funny story, I'll make it short, David, was that I had an earring at that time. And all the young players on my team started getting earrings and their parents got really upset at me. Then later at university, David, as I couldn't play basketball anymore because my back, I had severe back problems, I actually got back into football. And how did I do that? I got several DVDs, curver coaching, for example, and I went to a local park and I trained myself every morning for 1 hour. So this was actually the birth of my coaching career, coaching myself, teaching myself to play football after all these years. Then when my son became a football player, his coach said, if one of the parents doesn't become an assistant coach, I have to, stop. And so my son asked me to join the team as assistant coach because I was always there anyway. Another one of my best friends, he was also, the same thing happened to him with his son. And at that time, we applied for the UEFA licenses. We started doing our courses, got my UEFA B license about 10 years ago. And already at the beginning, I got really interested in cognitive training because I'm a person that's very interested in innovation. Whatever I do, I've always worked with young people in music. I've worked with my wife with young people at church. And I've always been interested in innovation. So I looked into technical training. I looked into technical training, athletic training, all of that. And it was very interesting. But for me, it was really clear that training the brain was something where there was still so much progress to be made. When I researched, there were very few people that offered anything on cognitive training, on brain training. So yeah, about 10 years ago, I ran into some DVDs by FC Bayern Munich coach Matthias Novak. And what really fascinated me about his approach to cognitive training was that you didn't need any technology, no computers, no flashing lights, no cables, no nothing. He was training elite players only by different movement tasks. So what I always do when something really interested me, I contacted him. I went to the sports school in Hennef, which is more or less about 3-4 hours from here. I'm based in Kiel, which is the capital of Schleswig-Holstein, the most northern state of Germany, between Denmark and Hamburg, next to the Baltic Sea. And there I did my training as a visual and cognitive coach in football with Matthias Novak and other people that specialize in visual training and that kind of thing. And so I have a background in law and mediation, conflict resolution, and I'm always interested in doing things in a systematic and structured way. So I asked Matthias, I said, so Matthias, I love your training, I love the exercises, but it seems a bit random to me how you do things. Where's the structure? Where's the system? And so I kept, bugging him about that, always asking questions. And at one moment we were taking a walk together and he said, you have to create the system. You have to create the structure. That's your job. So that was in 2017. And we started chatting a lot. I think I have over 100,000 WhatsApp messages by him. We chat every day. We exchange exercises and ideas. And so our idea was, David, to develop a systematic, structured approach to cognitive training, something that every player, every coach could just take and apply very easily, step by step, as it exists in technical training, for example. For many years, we created a structure, we created a system. At the end of the day, from 2017 to 19, we wrote 8 modules for coaches. And then an American startup called Cognigoals, they contracted us to create online courses for them and film online courses. And that's what we did in 2020. It was in Malente, which is a very small town here in Schleswig-Holstein, very famous for the spirit of Malente, because that's where the German national team prepared in 1974, the year that we won, not our last, but the second World Cup after 54, before 1990 and 2014. And so we filmed these modules. We had players from the Youth Academy from Bayern Munich, a female U17 European champion. And the years after that, it was post-production, which was a lot of work. But I can proudly say in July this year, we finally, the first 3 modules of our training were released. And basically, David, we focus on 3 aspects, and those are two-footedness and game intelligence and creativity. So that's already a bit of cognitive training, about my background. I could talk a lot more about each aspect.
So I'll ask you quite a few questions now then. So you said that two-footedness, game intelligence, and what was the last one again?
Creativity.
Creativity, of course, right. Okay, yeah. So if I was a player to start with, if you're going to take me on a journey from A to B, what could I expect to achieve in that journey?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. The first aspect that we focus on, David, is two-footedness. And as Matthias and I always say, two-footedness is the cold case of modern football. You can talk to 100 coaches. How do you improve two-footedness? They'll all say the same. And I also said the same thing. And I believe the same thing, David. How do you improve two-footedness? It's by practice, touches. And I even took it so far, David, that in my teams, I would do game forms, even before matches, where I would only allow my players to use their weak foot. Because coming from a basketball background, it was very strange for me when I started training football players that they were all so one-footed, or so many of them were one-footed. So I said, I have to improve this. So the only idea that I had was touches, touches, touches. And when we got together with our scientists to prepare the modules, the Cognigoals training, we said we have to find a different approach. And the approach, David, it has to begin in the brain. So we analyzed, why do players, even at the highest level, the professional level, and you can observe it every weekend, even in the Premier League, why, when there's pressure, when there's opponents, there's little space, little time, why do even the best players, most of the best players, use their strong foot? And the answer is quite simple. It's because it feels better. They feel more secure. And I know you as a sports psychologist, you understand right away what I'm talking about. And they use the wrong foot because it's the strong foot. Okay.
Yeah.
So we said we have to change that feeling in the brain. So Matthias and I, we sat down and we developed a whole new kind of exercises which focus on taking the strong foot out of its comfort zone. So basically, we're attacking that good feeling. And at the same time, we create a new comfort zone for the weak foot. So what do we do? Let me give you a practical example. We take an exercise, let's say inside, outside, inside. Not a typical technical exercise. It feels quite strange if you try it out. So we do that on the strong foot. At the same time, the player has to do some kind of cognitive add-on. We take a simple one, clapping in front and behind and in front of the body, or, different arm movements. And then we switch over to the weak side, but just to do outside, inside, just 2 touches. And let me tell you, when you're suffering with your strong foot because the coach has given you a really difficult challenge, and then you can switch over to the weak foot, and you just have to do something very simple. Outside touch, inside touch. Every soccer player, every football player can do that. Oh, it starts to feel good, David. So, we have a whole system. This is just an example. We have a whole structured and systematic approach to do this, to take the strong foot out of the comfort zone and to create a new comfort zone for the weak foot. So this is what our scientists call the comfort zone principle. And the fascinating thing is, David, this actually works. And it doesn't take years or months. It's after 1 or 2 training sessions. And I ask the players, I talk a lot to my players, how do you feel? How does your weak foot feel? And they say, wow, actually, it's felt better than ever before. So that's what the first 3 modules are about. Create a new comfort zone. And then what we try is that the two-footedness, it really is converted into something very stable. And in the 3rd module, we try to have the weak foot on the same level as the strong foot. Now, I know there are a lot of football coaches listening to your podcasts, and if I were them, I wouldn't believe me. Because it's to be honest, David, it's a really revolutionary approach. I can't describe it differently. And the only way to find out if it's true is to try out the exercises. That's actually what happened to me when we were discussing with our scientists. I said, I'm not sure I believe this. I'm not sure this is going to work. But when I was on the pitch, David, and I had elite youth players from Germany, players that have the greatest coaches, that play for the greatest teams, and I started training with them. I even trained in my backyard, 2 minutes from where I'm sitting here. And after one training session, they would all say, wow, my weak foot has never felt this good. I was convinced. I didn't believe the scientists. I didn't believe Matthias Novak, but I did believe my players. So this is a really, really exciting thing because, one thing is clear, two-footedness. If you're two-footed, this is one of the greatest advantages that a football player can have. Look at Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, players from Liverpool. What's one of the main aspects that Jurgen Klopp is choosing them? He's a very intelligent manager who I admire a lot. It's because they're two-footed, but there are not many out there. In the youth Bundesliga, the highest level of German youth football, there's less than 10% of the players that are two-footed at the moment. So I was invited to a podcast about a month ago by Ray Power, And Ray said, this might really be the next frontier in football training. If there is a way to train two-footedness, this is definitely something a lot of clubs and a lot of coaches will be interested in. And the next thing that improving the executive functions, the cognitive skills of our players is the game intelligence. I mean, game intelligence in football, it describes the ability to act appropriately and generate optimal solutions in different game situations. And you can be sure if their cognitive flexibility is improved, their inhibitory control, and also their working memory, they will be able to perceive and process information a lot quicker. Matthias Nowak, he always says, what we do with our motor cognitive training is we train the hardware. And based on that, the players are able to perceive the information a lot quicker, a lot better, anticipate a lot quicker and better, and also to take better decisions. And that's where creativity comes into play, because creativity, it's the ability to develop new, original, and useful ideas for problem solving. And that's what football and modern football is all about. And it's also from a fan perspective, David, that this is so important, because you and I, we've been watching football for many years, and I've actually observed myself at being a bit bored sometimes. When I've watched tactical chess matches, I'm not saying I fell asleep in front of the television or in the stadium, but it's a bit boring. And especially if you're a coach, you can predict so many things. And what strikes me is, and I'm talking about youth academies in Germany, a lot of players, they pass, but there's so few that know how to dribble. The only player that we have in the German national team at the moment who can really dribble well, Jamal Musiala, he's from the UK. He didn't go through the German academies. So something that we at Cognigoals, we also focus on is we want courageous players. We want wild dribblers. We want players that by their cognitive flexibility, by their problem solving, by their motor variability, that are able to create unusual and new solutions, that do tricks, that are courageous in game situations. It's not always the same thing. And especially, David, when a team parks the bus, you need these kind of players that can go 1v1, 1v2. So that's also something that we focus on.
Yeah, everything you're saying sort of, well, it sort of smacks a little bit of mental toughness in there as well. I'm just intrigued. What would your definition of mental toughness be in a football context?
Well, that's actually a tough one. Generally speaking, mental toughness for me is what you do, or let's say this, to do what's right, even when there's severe adversity. But applying this to football, it's actually, as you said, a lot of what I've been talking about. To be courageous, even in difficult game situations, to do something that you've never done before. And you know what, to be not to be afraid to make mistakes. So many players, they seem to be afraid to make mistakes these days. But that's something also as coaches where we play a crucial role. We have to, it's our job to develop players that are courageous, that are not afraid to take risks, that are not afraid to make mistakes, and that know that we as coaches, we stand behind them. We're with them even when they make mistakes. And for me, David, when I got into coaching, something that was very clear for me from the beginning was the most important thing for any coach is to build good relationships with your players, to really, really be interested in their lives, to observe, to listen, to ask questions, and then to listen again. That for me is one of the most important aspects as a coach. And that also means that you as a coach, David, you have to be someone who opens their heart, who's able to share about their losses, their defeats, their uncertainties. And the players, they're not dumb. One of my, it's not a phrase that's for me. I don't even know by who it is. Maybe it says players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And for me, that's a mantra of football coaching. Whatever player I coach, I ask them about their family. I ask them about their dreams. I ask them about their strengths, their weaknesses. I ask them about their goals. I ask questions. And when training them with our Cognigoals motor cognitive training, I'm asking a lot of questions, David. It's a bit of different. It's not, instructions. I want to know how they feel. I want to help them to, I think you call it proprioception. I want to help them to observe themselves better. That's something for me that's very important. So mental toughness has something to do with vulnerability also.
Yeah, I'd agree. Can I just take you back to your youth? Because one of the first things you mentioned was about how you had an authoritarian coach as a youngster, and how it turned you away from football. Do you think that experience has impacted your coaching style?
Oh, definitely. Because the coach I had before was sort of like a father figure, and also the basketball coaches that I had afterwards. They were the kind of coaches, who really were interested in the players, who spent time with us. And so, this definitely has a lot to do with the way that I think coaching should be done. And there's a funny story, David, because about 3 years after I got into coaching, we had a match, and the visitors were coming, and I went to the dressing room to greet the coach, and there I ran into that coach again from many years back. And you know what? He shouted at me. He said, "Oh, everything is organized so terribly here." And during that match, David, believe it or not, he ran onto the pitch and tried to hit one of my players, because he hadn't changed. He'd even gotten worse. Wow. So and one of my parents, who was a martial art guy, he ran onto the pitch and he stopped him, which wasn't that difficult. But it's I think the new kind of coaches generation, David, we have to be people that really, really connect with our players in a personal way. And I'm not saying that you as a coach, you don't have to know what you're doing and the players should, dominate your... No, not at all. I'm all for being really well prepared. I'm all for being a professional coach and giving my players the very best in every training session. But I want to know what's important to my players. I want to listen to them. I want to get to know them, because only if I get to know them on a personal level, I know how to motivate them. I know what drives them. I know what weaknesses they've observed. And I mean, the players, they're living with themselves 24 hours a day, David. So, they know themselves quite well. And if I don't, dig into that information, if I don't ask them, I'm losing a lot as a coach, a lot of information that I can use to be a better coach, to help them better. So this is foundational for me, to connect with the players, to listen to them and listen again. And that way I can find out how to be the best coach for them.
Two things you've said there really spring to mind for me. If I'm a player and a coach is asking me about myself and my personal life, what's going on, then I would imagine I'm gonna feel a respect for the coach, and I'm not gonna have a too much of a hierarchical thing going on in my head, where I'm gonna feel like I'm on a level, if you like, with the coach, which is gonna then instill a feeling of confidence, I would imagine. And a word you've used quite a lot in this podcast is that word feeling. And when you talked about the cognitive training and how initially, when you were talking about the two-footedness, how you're trying to change a feeling in the brain, essentially. I see the value in both the coaching style and what you're talking about there with the training.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm still connected with a lot of the players from my son's team from years back. And, for me, from being my players, they've become like family, like sons to me, David. I mean, a lot of them, some have gone on to play at a very high level, but a lot of them didn't, as is normal, So, some are over in the US playing college soccer and studying to be, business administration, that kind of thing. Others are working in social media. But the thing is, spending these years together as a coach and a player, it's created a special bond, because I was interested in their lives. They were interested in my life. I tried to give them the very best as a coach. And that way, the team was raised to a completely new level. I mean, only with that team, we won the league twice. We had a record of 197-9 goals one season, which was the sixth best record in all of Germany. And it was only not the best record, David, because one game where we won 31-0, it was erased because the team, after playing us, they didn't continue. And we ascended 2 leagues with that team. We won a cup final against a team which was playing in the highest league in the state in penalty kicks. So there were very, very special experiences that I had with that team. And I think, David, none of it would have been possible without that personal connection. Because let me tell you, those were players, they were quick in the brain. And they weren't technically the greatest, but they, the brain training, it created a lot of quickness and original ideas. But it's actually, as you said, they had a mental toughness, which was unique. The players on that team, David, they ran more than any other team anywhere. And it was because there was this feeling that they were a family, one fighting for the other, everybody, so yeah, I mean, a lot of special memories coming back to me when you're asking me that. And of course, especially special because my son was part of it, And the funny thing was, there's so many stories of parents and children, and their sons. And is this a good idea for a parent to train their son? So my son and I, we had the agreement after every season, we would talk. And he was actually the one who would encourage me more than anybody else to continue. And up until today, David, this has created a really special bond between my son and myself. And my son, who's studying in Hamburg now, he's just become a U8 coach himself. So that's nice. Also a really nice development. And
yeah, definitely. So, right, where do we go with this? So obviously, yeah, you've talked about game intelligence and creativity, and
can I add something to that, to David? That just came to my mind. I saw an interview a couple of years ago with the youth coaches from Barcelona that were talking about Lionel Messi, and I could never forget what they shared because, and I'd never heard it before. They mentioned that the most special thing that they'd observed about Lionel Messi when he came over from Argentina was that whatever team he was playing on and whatever age group, he played with a lot of players that were older than themselves. They said the one thing that they found the most remarkable about him was his ability to adapt to all the different teams, opponents, and different game situations. And that's actually something that is one of the main focuses of our motor cognitive training: adaptability and versatility. And I think if you look at modern football, this is a quality. Pep Guardiola, he talks about polyvalent players that are able to play different positions at the same level. So this is also something, we talk about two-footedness, we talk about game intelligence and creativity, but adaptability, this is the secret weapon. If you have players, in every game situation is different. So you have to adapt the best that you can. So this is also something that we really focus on our training. The exercises and the patterns that we use, they change the whole time. So the players are forced to adapt the whole time. And this is very strenuous. So when we start training, sometimes players, you can only train for 20 or 30 minutes. Nico Carrera, who's the captain of the US U23 national team, who's playing here in Holstein Kiel, and I train him regularly. He always tells the story that I trained him for the first time on a Sunday. And he was very keen on giving his best and showing me that he was a great player. And he did okay for the first 20 minutes. But then afterwards, his performance dropped so much. He was suffering terribly. And he told me he went home and he slept for the next 9 hours because it was so exhausting, the training. And it just shows that this kind of training, even if you're playing in professional academies, it's not something that there's a lot of emphasis put on. And so I'm really convinced it's something where every player has the possibility to improve, not just a little, but a lot. I think it's something where performance leaps are really possible. And it's great. You know, a lot of coaches now, they've bought our online courses, David, and we're getting the first feedback, and it's so fascinating. And it's coaches from all kinds of. There's a coach, for example, from the professional academy in Ghent, which is where Kevin De Bruyne is from, who's bought the program, but also grassroots coaches and coaches from all over the world. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't depend on the country or the level. They're all already sharing about the improvements their players are making with the weak foot. So it's.
I'd imagine as well, because it's still quite new. It's in its infancy.
Yeah,
so it's only a few years. You're just going to learn more and more, aren't you, from different coaches and from players, and where this goes in a few years' time will be it'll be fascinating. Before we look at the key takeaways from our conversation, I am intrigued. Obviously, you talked there about adaptability and how important that is, and naturally, of course it is, because every game is very different. Every game situation, that no two are the same. So there's an awful lot there in terms of dealing with pressure. So how can you again just highlight, maybe to a coach, to a player, what a typical session would look like on a one-to-one basis there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's stay with football. I usually start with some warm-up exercises, which the thing is, traditional warm-up, players can do it even, I was going to say, when sleeping. But it's very monotonous. It's the same thing. So what we try to do is we try to break the patterns, and the players have to be online with their thoughts, with their head. If not, they can't do these kind of. Let me just highlight a very simple exercise. It's called 3D move. You do sidestep at the 45-degree angle to the right. 3 side steps. 1, 2, 3. Then you turn 45 degrees to the left. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a simple start. But now, what if I would tell you, okay, 3 side steps to the right, 2 to the left, 1 to the right, and you start over, this time to the left, 3 to the left, 2 to the right, 1 to the. Okay, so now do this backwards. Okay, now turn it upside down. 1, 2, 3, and you can already at that moment you have to start working the brain. So that's we have hundreds of these kind of warm-up exercises, and the thing is, they don't only warm up the body, they also warm up the brain, which in our opinion, it's not a bad thing if you're about to play a very important football match. So, but that's also for warm up in one of the individual training sessions. So what do we do next? I'm just talking about individual training. On a team context, I can't go into that now, David, but we have created chaos game forums. We've created creativity game forums. So in a team context, there's lots of other things that can be done. But talking about individual training. So next, I would have prepared a different mixture of motor cognitive training exercises with and without the ball. And what we do many times, David, is that we combine them. So on the way there, you do an exercise with the ball, then you leave the ball, and on the way back, you have to do a different exercise without the ball. And you have to turn quickly and start it right away. So talking about adaptability, it's very clear why that kind of approach trains it. So they can jog, then they get the ball again. So it's a mixture of exercises with the ball and without the ball. So basically, if we start with our Cognigoals training, it's two-footedness. So for example, you would start out with the exercise that I mentioned before, inside, outside, inside on the strong foot. And then we would add different kind of cognitive add-ons. I can't show this because this is an audio recording, but many might have heard of the rabbit and the hunter. Rabbit and the hunter is you take one hand and you make the rabbit ears, and the other hand you make the hunter, and then you change rabbit hunter, rabbit hunter. You want to try out? I'm just joking.
No thanks, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But imagine if you would have to do that while dribbling. Oh, or another one. I can't show it to the audience, but we have several. And the thing is, so we add these kind of the clapping that I mentioned before. So that would be a typical exercise, then switching to the weak foot to build that comfort zone. That's just, module 1 of our training. At the end of the training session, David, I always try to have a special challenge. So, for example, we have different movement combinations that we work with, which are called dittos. Also, trying to explain this now will be a bit complicated, but a typical Cognigoals movement combination, David, consists of 3 different movements that we combine. Okay, so movement 1, outside touch, sidestep. Movement 2, outside touch and cross with the leg behind the other leg, which is already a very interesting cognitive challenge because it forces both sides of the brain to connect for that kind of crossover movement, okay? And the last one is just outside inside, a very simple movement, okay? When you start over, it's starting with the left foot. So there's the two-footedness, okay? But now imagine if you would have to combine these 3 movements, not 1, 2, 3, but 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
I need to lie down.
Every professional player, David, who I've done this with, has struggled.
Yeah.
And there's different patterns that we've developed over the years. This is one which is very good for training cognitive flexibility because, you have to switch and switch. Nothing is ever the same. And now, let me tell you, David, what if you would take another cognitive movement pattern with the ball? I'll tell you one more, okay? One more. It's outside, outside, inside, right foot, outside, inside, left foot, and then only inside with the right foot. Then you start over, outside, outside, inside, outside, inside, inside. And now you can combine these 2 movement patterns. You can do one on the way there, one on the way back. And that's, David, where we have it. Adaptability, versatility, cognitive flexibility, motor variability. It's all being trained there. So, this is just, some highlights, but there's so much more.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely fascinating. I can see how, as we say, when there's players are under pressure in a game situation, how they're these are the amazing resources to draw upon. So yeah, Felix, look, we could quite easily continue this, and I think I might ask you to come back on and describe some of the team stuff at some point. Sure. But for now, could you just offer 3 key takeaways for the listeners, please?
Yeah. When my South American family asks me who's better, Maradona or Pelé, I always answer, for me, it's Johan Cruyff. And so as a first takeaway, I want to give you a couple of quotes by Johan Cruyff. Johan Cruyff said, football is a game you play with your brains. And he also said, you play football with your head and your legs are there to help you. So it's not me saying that, it's Johan Cruyff, for me, most intelligent player who's ever played. And that's coming from a German.
I think, did Andre Pirlo come up with a quote very, very similar to that as well, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, definitely. Xavi, there's different players with similar quotes, but as I love Cruyff, I'm quoting Cruyff, and I'm sure he said it first.
Exactly.
And the second thing, David, that's very important for me, because I don't think that too many football coaches are convinced of this yet. Two-footedness, game intelligence, and creativity can be trained. They can be improved. It's not something, you're genetically stuck with. There's just players that are, more intelligent or dumber or whatever. No, this is something like technical training, tactical training, and athletic training. This can be trained systematically. And the last takeaway, I've said it before during the podcast, I think after years where we focused on technical, tactical, and athletic training, cognitive training is the future of football training. And it's really what's needed to create a new player generation. And let me say this, where do we need it more than in Germany? I mean, if we don't focus on this kind of thing, I mean, coming up in 2024, we have the European Championship. And I think there's very little Germans that are very optimistic about that tournament at the moment. So we know we have to change things in Germany, but I think this is something wherever I go and whatever nation football coaches are from, they all agree. They all agree that cognitive and the cognitive part, there's so much potential to improve the players. So I'm very excited to be part of that. And David, I've shared a lot about our training. I admire the work a lot of other professionals that are out there that work in this kind of field. I'm open to exchange, to learn. I'm learning every day. It's actually why I love coaching also a lot. It's the players, it's the relationships, but it's also the part of learning, David. So I just wanted to say that, a lot of admiration to other coaches that are working in cognitive training. And I'm learning all the time. And we've put out the best that we have at the moment. And very thankful for all the coaches that have joined us. And with open arms, we want to welcome a lot more.
On that note, I'm going to give one little key takeaway, which links to what you just said there. I think it's so important for anyone, whether you're a football coach, a player, a psychologist, simply to be open to learning, open to experience, and not have that fixed mindset, because there's always somebody who does something a little bit differently where you can just pick up another skill. So there's my pills of wisdom anyway. So whereabouts can the listeners get in touch with you should they want to reach out, Felix?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm on Twitter as Vico Coaching. It was just VICO Coaching. Also on LinkedIn now. Just been on there for a couple of months. And of course, Cognigoals.com. That's our main web page where you can find all the courses. We've just released the first 3 modules. There's actually 5 more that we're working on. The next step in 2024, beginning of 2024, is we're going to release the 3 modules for players, so that every player, and a lot of parents that are asking us that, has the chance to also go through the training by themselves. So that's the next step. And to all the coaches that are listening, I'm a very communicative person. So I love people writing me DMs, asking me questions. I try to answer within 24 hours. I really love exchanging ideas. And I'm also open to critical messages and difficult questions. So, throw them at me. It makes my life more interesting.
Sounds good to me. Well, big thank you for your time today.
Yeah, it was an honor being there. Thanks so much to you, David. And I hope to be on again soon.
Well, that was a fun episode to record with Felix. And I'm going to take you back to basics of mental toughness here in my musings. So we've got the 4 C's. We've got confidence, we've got control, we've got challenge, and we've got commitment. And each C there has 2 measures. Overall mental toughness, though, is about dealing with pressure naturally. So when we look at some of these measures, inside of control, we've got life control, which is essentially having a can-do attitude towards your life and different situations that are thrown your way. Then we've got emotional control, and how you can manage your emotions effectively under pressure. We've got risk orientation, which falls under the challenge umbrella. So risk orientation is about taking risks, or maybe some people will spend too much time in their comfort zone and play it safe. We can also throw in confidence and ability. Naturally, if we feel confident to be able to perform a task, we're going to feel more relaxed and at home on the ball. And traditionally, if I was trying to help a footballer with these different aspects, I would look at psychological skills training. So that would be a case of trying to shift their perspective by restructuring their thoughts, looking at their feelings and different actions take place in specific situations on the pitch. So it'd be very strategic, if you like. The aim would be to make them more self-aware, to improve their decision making. There's a fair chance I would also throw in some visualization and possibly some sports hypnosis too, to add some layers onto the initial discussions. However, I think Felix has touched on something here. We've got cognitive training into the mix too, which adds another layer. And, if we're honest, maybe having conversations, talking strategy isn't for every athlete. Footballers and different athletes, especially younger people, are very active. They want to be doing something practical. So as a sports psychologist, it's important for us to factor that in the way that we go about things. And certainly when it comes down to the coaching aspect here, if we're thinking about cognitive skills training, that is going to tick that box no end. So the player who wants to improve their touch, their game intelligence, their creativity in different situations, well, yeah, technical training is going to help. Tactical training is going to help. Obviously, athletic ability and athletic training is going to help. Now we can throw in cognitive training as well as the psychological skills training into the mix. And it's going to really help create players that can deal with pressure more effectively and make better decisions on the fly, on the spot. Because as we alluded to, football, well, it's a game that's ever changing. It's challenging. It's uncomfortable at times. So finding different solutions is very important. And if you want to hear about different solutions, certainly when we're talking about psychological skills training, please do sign up to the X Factor newsletter, which goes out on a regular basis for people who are involved in football, be that players, be that coaches, be that parents. The details are in the show notes. Have a fabulous day. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.